Welcome to another DK Custom Products video. Today we're going to go over hose clamps, how to tighten them, how not to tighten them, and how to make sure you keep a good seal. So we are doing this video showing how to tighten hose clamps, which seems sort of elementary, but what's really surprising is all the different ways there are to fasten a hose to a barb. There's pinch clamps. We've tried these. There's different kinds of hose clamps. Harley, this is the Harley brand. It's a pinch clamp right there that they use on some of their setups, and they still use hose clamps also. Everything we've tested, the thing that works the best are hose clamps. What's really surprising is how easily they fail, and how little you have to tighten them to get them to hold well. And what happens when you over tighten them, which causes not only a failure of the hose clamp, but also could result in a leak. So let's take a look at a few things here. The first thing we're going to do is put a piece of hose on the barb with no hose clamp at all. And you can see it pulls off pretty easily, and it's not even hot right now. And of course, when it gets hot and soft, it'll pull off easier. So now we're going to try it with the pinch clamp. And you can see that the pinch clamp, it probably is going to hold just fine. It's not really making it pooch much at all. And this is what a lot of hoses are held on by, but it's not as strong as an actual hose clamp like this, a worm drive hose clamp. But it is something that we've experimented with, and let's see what it takes.
I hope that was on video because
it went to about 60. What you have, the barb that it's going on has a little flare on it, where the flare is a larger diameter than where the clamp goes. The clamp needs to be in here, and then there's the flare. What we're going to do now, because we saw you put a hose on it, the hose comes out pretty easily without a clamp. We're going to put a clamp on it, but we're not going to tighten it anywhere near to the point of an ideal tightness. And you'll see that because this flare is larger in diameter than this, as long as we tighten the clamp down where the inner diameter of the clamp is smaller than this, there's no way for it to pull off. So we're putting the hose clamp on the hose. We're going to slide it on, and you see it slides on. Now we're going to tighten that hose clamp down just a little. Not even a tenth of a foot-pound. Just barely hand tighten it down. That's probably...
it's just, yeah, I can't even grip on that.
Okay. Now, go ahead and try and pull it off, Devin. And see, it pulled until it got to the flare. Can you get it? Pull it off, man. Pull it off. Okay. So were you putting half your weight into that? A quarter your weight?
Over half, I would say. Over half of my weight.
How much do you weigh?
200.
200? So 100 pounds of pull?
Easily 100 pounds of pull.
100 pounds of pull to get that to come off. And that was with the hose clamp just finger tight. And you can see it's not digging into the hose one bit. But because that hose clamp is smaller in diameter, actually it's not. Just a little bit more would make it smaller in diameter. Can you slide that back on, or will it go?
I think I want to go without loosening some.
So we're going to loose it some. We're going to tighten it just a little bit more than what we just had it.
And this hose has already been compromised. You know, it dug in, so that this is a worse than ideal situation because the hose has been compromised.
So hand tight, and then what? 1.5 turns?
And just to show that this goes to minimum of 15 inch-pounds, we're not going to be anywhere near that. So I'll just go.
Okay.
Half a turn.
Okay. Now you can see it's just barely started digging into the hose right there. I mean, not enough to be ideal, but now I bet you can't pull it off no matter what you do, because that hose clamp is smaller in diameter than the flare.
Now,
Here.
Just to
Yeah, it's not going to come. You're going to tear the hose or tear your muscles. So what we've done, and this is so important, guys, when you're putting your hose clamps on. This hose clamp is barely, I mean, is it, Devin? Is it even digging in? It's maybe digging in a little, but it's not as tight as we're going to show you the ideal tightness. But you can't get the hose off because the hose clamp is smaller in diameter than the flare on the nipple. So it does not have to even be tightened down to prevent the hose from leaking or coming off of the barb. So let's go ahead. Is your hand okay?
it actually see how hard I was pulling.
Oh. So, and that's with the hose clamp that's just barely, it's tightened down hand tight and then half a turn with the ratchet, right?
Yeah, or you know, a regular screwdriver with way tighter than that.
Now, let's tighten this down. What we're going to do now is tighten this down to the ideal. And what is the ideal? The ideal is when the rubber in these little holes is just starting to pooch through the holes a little. Not pooching out past the holes, but just digging in just a little. You don't want the hose clamp to dig in so tight that it starts cutting the hose, but you want it just to pooch just a little on this side and a little on this side and out a little on there. So we're going to tighten this down to the ideal tightness. You don't need a machine or anything to do it, a torque wrench or anything. You just tighten it down until you barely see. There it is right there. You see that the hose clamp is just barely smaller than this side of the hose or that. It's just pooching out a little. Not enough to cut the hose. And I don't want you to hurt your hand again trying to pull it, but obviously this is tighter than it was when we couldn't pull it off. There's no way this is coming off. There's no way we put enough torque on here to cause the hose clamp to fail. It's not. This is why there are billions of these hose clamps all around the world holding on hoses. So that is the ideal. Now this torque wrench goes up to 15, or goes down to 15 inch-pounds. We're nowhere near 15 inch-pounds. We're probably somewhere around 3 or 4 or 5 inch-pounds. Because let's watch how many turns we have to go to get this thing to fail. And it's going to fail somewhere between 18 and 24 inch-pounds, which is 1.5 to 2 foot-pounds. So there's one full turn. Now let's just look at the hose. Look at how much that hose clamp is digging in. With hours and hours, you know, of vibration, it's going to go back and forth like that against that cutting in, and it's going to eventually cut that hose. And that's just one turn more than it needs to be. Now we're at 2 turns more than it needs to be, and we're at 21 inch-pounds, less than 2 foot-pounds. And look how tight that is. I mean, I'm going to pull this up here. Look at how much that's digging in. That's horrible. And the rubber's pooching out past these. Has it failed yet?
No. Starting to. See, I can tell that it's starting to fail, but it's still tightening right now. But I can tell that I'm way in the danger zone.
26 inch-pounds, so just a tad more than 2 foot-pounds. So now let's look at the hose. Here, look at this. Look at how tight that is. So just a hair over 2 foot-pounds. Look how tight that is. The hose clamp is starting to fail, but even if the hose clamp wasn't failing, the hose is going to fail because it's going to get cut. So that's an example of how not to do it. You're going to get a hose clamp failure, or you're going to get a hose failure from it cutting in so much. So I hope you guys are enjoying this tech tip video, instructional on how to do hose clamps with the hose for the oil filter relocation and oil coolers. You put your hose on, put it all the way up against the end, make sure that the hose clamp is 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch away from the end of the hose. You want that hose clamp to be nowhere close to this flared out piece here. So it's clamping down right in here.
You can even stick it up there, and alright, so I'm
Yeah.
right in the middle, like,
Yeah.
and you just.
And tighten it down with a screwdriver or a socket. And you're going for, 5 to 7 inch-pounds. Because we know, and you just want that rubber to just barely be pooching on either side of the hose. Okay? So that's perfect. And there's no way that that hose clamp is anywhere near failure, and there's no way that that hose is coming off, and it's not so tight that the hose clamp is going to cut in to the hose and cause a failure there. So that's it, folks. If you liked the video, please put a comment below. If you have any tips you want to add, put a comment below. You all ride safe out there.